Thank you so much to Investors in People for inviting us to come along today and share some of our experiences. We're really thrilled to be able to do that. Um, as we've learned, there's going to be three of us speaking today, myself, Jeremy and Annalisa, each kind of discussing various angles of what we've been doing on our IIP journey. I'm going to be kicking off this session by introducing the Guinness Partnership and sharing a bit about what we're about and giving a bit of a flavour of our IOP journey, and then I'll hand over to Jeremy to talk about diversity inclusion. So Guinness is a national housing association. It was founded in 1890. So we've been providing homes and services for over 130 years. This slide shows the first Guinness Trust building in London, quite a sort of formidable building back in the day. The Guinness Trust was started from a considerable charitable donation from a member of the Guinness family, so the brewery family, and that family isn't part of Guinness these days, but we have a really proud heritage. And in fact, you know, nothing's really changed in the 130 years since we were set up in terms of what we're about. Our mantra is that we're here to improve people's lives and create possibilities for them. So our social purpose is really important at Guinness, and it's what binds us together. We share a vision and we share a set of values. Everything we do is about our customers, our communities, and also about our people. The Guinness Partnership is made up of 3 employers, and overall we have around 2,800 employees. So this slide shows the 3 employers. We've got the Guinness Partnership Limited, so that's our housing business. We have over 140,000 homes and over 60,000 residents. Around a sixth of our homes are for shared ownership and the rest are social rent. We're also a house builder, so we plan to build another 5,500 new homes by March 2024, which will feed into our portfolio. So Guinness Property, that provides the property maintenance services to around 75% of our homes. And then the third employer that we have is Guinness Care. So Guinness Care supports older people living in our homes, as well as those living in specialised housing, including extra care schemes. We also support adults with learning and physical disabilities, and we have over 10,000 customers. So next slide, please, Jeremy. We've shared with colleagues a booklet that sets out our Guinness 2023 strategy, which we put together a few years ago now in 2018. And every year we then publish a business plan which sets out our specific goals for that year against the strategy. So we're midway through our strategy period. And we have 4 headline focus areas, which we call the 4 greats. So we have great service, great homes, great business, and great place to work. Communication is key. So making sure that everyone knows what we need to do, how we need to do it, and why it's important. So that's why we have really clear documentation that we share with our colleagues each year. So for Great Place to Work, our target is to have 85% employee engagement, and that piece of work is supported by our our people strategy and also our diversity and inclusion strategy. So I myself have worked for Guinness for 4 years now as Group HR Director. When I joined in 2017, Investors in People had introduced the new standard, and Guinness had dropped from the previously gold position to silver, but the business was really focused on getting back to gold and had an opportunity to use the 1-year amnesty. And when I joined, I was just blown away by the determination and passion at Guinness. And by summer 2017, we're actually back at gold. So that was really great, a great introduction to the organisation. The table on this slide shows our IIP journey and also plots our engagement scores over the years. So I sort of looked at the last 4 years since 2017 when I joined. So you see that TGPL gained gold in 2017, Guinness Property was at silver and then gained gold in 2020, and Guinness Care was standard and gained silver in 2019. And in terms of engagement, so we've achieved our 85% across the group, so we're bang on target, and actually the engagement for TGPL, which is the main part of the business, is 86%, so really, really thrilled with that. So 2020 was in many ways a really difficult year for all businesses. Of course it was, you know, we know what happened in 2020. But for us, we also had some great wins during the year. So not only did Guinness Property achieve gold, as I was just saying, but we also won 3 IIP awards, of which we're really, really proud. So the Diversity and Inclusion Award, hence why we're talking today, the Health and Wellbeing Award, and also we received a special recognition reward for the support that we gave our colleagues during the pandemic. So that was really exciting. And then on top of that, also Guinness Care was shortlisted for a silver award. So of course, it's not all straightforward. There are challenges, and challenges create opportunities. And I just listed a few of the challenges that we have kind of faced over the last few years, you know, despite obviously having lots of success. So I think it's really important to have the right people working on engagement and having a team around you that can communicate effectively with the organisation. And in terms of engagement, actually in the last year or 18 months, we've been able to double our engagement headcount from 1 to 2. We also have Jeremy, who heads up communications, so we're a formidable team. And this has opened up so many more opportunities for us because we've had more resource. So it's allowed us to be really proactive. And some of the work that Annalisa has helped us with anti-racism, we'll share with you later. Another challenge for us was actually when Guinness Property went through its transformation programme. So in 2019, we embarked on a major transformation programme for our property services to address some of the performance and productivity issues. And it was a huge restructure from top to tail, really, thinking about how the business worked. And we lost 100 employees during the restructure. And you'd think this could have had a devastating effect on morale and engagement, but actually it was quite the opposite. And it's sort of testament to the work we did around the transformation to really communicate all the time with our colleagues and help them understand exactly why we were doing what we were trying to achieve. And so actually it had the opposite effect of reducing morale and engagement. It actually improved it, and we got gold through IIP. Of course, there have been lots of global things that are happening, and it's really important that we stay relevant, and our colleagues expect us to be aware of societal issues. I think especially given our social purpose, our values, and our culture, which has people at the core of everything we do. We're really committed to equality of opportunity, protecting the vulnerable and giving everybody a voice. And so we've been doing some really good work in this area, I think. The global pandemic, mentioned it earlier, so that's hit everybody sideways, but it also creates opportunities. So it's been a real opportunity for us to focus on protecting the health and well-being of our employees, which we've been really working hard at over the last year. And some of the things that we did to help our employees was topping up furlough to 100%. I know lots of other organisations did that, but it meant a lot to our colleagues. We did a lot of work to look after the clinically vulnerable and those who had clinically vulnerable people in their households. We launched a happiness index, which was a pulse survey so that people could just share their feelings 24/7. We launched lots of regular comms, providing hint and tips around things like mental and physical health. We launched a meditation app. We provided guidance to our managers about how they would support their colleagues when they were working remotely. And we also provided support on homeschooling. So a great opportunity to really help people. And healthcare in crisis. Guinness Care has a really tough time of it. It's been a really tough few years for the health and social care sector, which I think makes the silver award that they achieved even more impressive. So Guinness Care operates in a very low margin sector with a difficult labour market, and this means recruitment's hard and attrition is high. but the care team have worked really hard to communicate their vision and keep people informed both about shorter term and longer term objectives. And very importantly, the Guinness values and behaviours are embedded in their culture and are role modelled right from the top. So on this slide, I wanted to kind of list some of the things that I think have really helped Guinness in our journey in the last few years, in our IIP journey. So when you look at the IIP standard, you realise it forms a really great blueprint for a successful business. Setting yourself goals against these themes really helps you to develop a strong business-focused business. In fact, the indicators and themes really resonate with us. They align closely to our strong sense of purpose, our values and our behaviours, and how we structure the work we do. In terms of measurement and communication, the best way to maintain a focus on continuous improvement is obviously to measure your progress at regular intervals, analyse the results, really look at what they're telling you. And sometimes we found that they didn't tell us what we initially thought they were telling us. So I think it's really important to dig into the results and then communicate back what this means to colleagues and use a variety of channels. We have quite a dispersed workforce and we always need to be thinking about how we can communicate with people across in very different roles. And part of the follow-up work we've been doing has included running a series of listening groups and a range of employee groups, and all the learnings are shared with the executive team, so they're very much involved in what our colleagues are telling us. Leadership from the top is really, really important. As HR professionals, we always talk about that. So we're really lucky. Our CEO, Katrina Simons, gets personally involved in reviewing our action plans and takes a really active role in the IIP assessments, which is really great because she gets to hear what our IIP assessors tell us. She's so passionate for people, and the people agenda is always kind of at the top. And of course that filters down through the organisation, and I find that we all walk the talk, which is really important. One of the things that demonstrates how the importance of the people agenda sort of filters down is working is that with our performance reviews, we each year get at least 98% completion rate, which I find astounding. I've never had that at any other organisation, so it's really great. Clear action planning is really, really important. And I think, Kath and Dorothy are our IIP assessors, and they've been able to give us a really good steer and help us to reflect on what's important and provide a real objective perspective for us. So, we take the IIP report that they provide us and analyse it in detail. We share the learnings with the leadership team. We create an action plan that we then kind of review regularly. I think it's all about planning, setting realistic goals that mean something to your business, and then following up to check that you've done what you said you were going to do. And finally, I suppose, our people plans are not something on the side or an optional extra. They are built into our business plans and our operating plans, which we publish and communicate every year. So everything we do is joined up. So I suppose if I had a few tips for you to take away, I've kind of listed things under 3 headings here. So communication, communication is always the most important thing. Make sure communication is engaging, clear and consistent. So make sure managers understand the key messages and then cascade them properly. We use a range of ways to communicate, such as roadshows, intranet articles, we have management briefings, and also we do share some printed information that we mail out to colleagues' addresses. I think it's really, really important that you identify and communicate what the shared purpose is. So, shared purpose unites people and gets people to pull together in the same direction. So making that really clear is really important. Also communicating why the things you're doing are important. So it's the Simon Sinek golden circle. People are motivated by understanding why things are important. What is the end goal? What are we all working towards? Be honest and transparent. Role modeling the behaviors from the top is really important. It's all about building trust. giving people a voice and listening to what they say. So we met with our staff forum as regularly as weekly at one point during the lockdown. And our staff forum all received training from ACAS around how to be effective communicators and also around employee relations. And I think our leadership team who get to hear what the staff forums say have found it really, really insightful. So involving, engaging and listening, I think that's the next really important thing. So involving colleagues in business planning and objective setting, not just doing it to people, but asking people for their involvement along the journey. So we always ask our colleagues to help us plan the business plans, and they then work on developing team operating plans. It's really important to measure success. So we regularly share our KPIs and the outcomes of a range of surveys and other metrics. So it's really important that you communicate that out. And also involving colleagues in continuous improvement activities. So we hold listening groups and we involve colleagues in process improvement working parties. We've recently been training managers in Lean Six Sigma, and so we'll be involving our colleagues in some of our Lean reviews moving forward. So that'll be quite exciting. And then my final top tip was around valuing people's contribution. So I think it's really important to be ambitious for the business and for your people. And we find it's energizing, always striving for better things, gives you energy and passion, but also be compassionate, supportive and focused on well-being. So we've been focused on health and well-being for a number of years, but obviously during the pandemic, that was an even keener priority for us. And then rewarding great behaviours or for people going the extra mile. So we encourage our managers and colleagues to actively acknowledge and thank each other. We also have a thank you voucher scheme where colleagues can receive in the moment thank you by way of a gift voucher of £25, an Amazon gift voucher, and that can be given by their manager. It doesn't need to be escalated for higher sign off. It's just an in the moment thank you. So on that note of thank yous, thank you for listening to our IIP journey. I'd like to hand over now to Jeremy, and he's going to talk to you a little bit more about diversity and inclusion.
Thank you very much, Chris. Hi everyone, it's fantastic to see so many people on the webinar this morning. I'm Jeremy Grimble, Director of Operations in the CEO's office at Guinness. I'm going to talk to you about diversity and inclusion. But before I do start, I should warn you, as I generally start these presentations, with the current working from home arrangements, I just want to let you know I have a very vocal cat here, and she tends to like to join video calls as and when she pleases. So if you hear any howling in the background, it's nothing to worry about. If a furry face pops up on the screen, I haven't put a filter on. And if she doesn't join us, I hope you won't be too disappointed to just have me. Anyway, okay, our D&I journey. I wanted to start talking to you about where we started with our most recent journey, and that was creating our D&I strategy. So Chris flagged in her presentation that 2017 was an important year. We were coming towards the end of a strategy period, and that was a period where we'd seen some real fundamental change in our organisation. We were starting to think about our new strategy, so our new corporate strategy, but at that point we were also launching our people strategy, and our CEO explained that she wanted this to be the point where we also launched our D&I strategy, because it was such an important part of the culture at Guinness and so fundamental to the successful delivery of all our other strategies. So this is where we started, and hopefully you'll find this short summary a helpful approach. So we started by thinking about why, as Chris just referred to a moment ago. We thought about why did D&I actually matter to us? Why did it matter to Guinness? So there'll be lots of reasons. Your organisation will have its own reasons, but for us, the first one was we have a legal duty. That was really important to us. Secondly, there's loads of evidence out there to show that organisations committed to D&I, it just makes good business sense. People perform better, sales are higher. So there was a clear business incentive for doing this. But for us, and Equally, if not more importantly, it was just morally the right thing to do, to be committed to diversity and inclusion. The next thing to think about is, what does diversity and inclusion actually mean to you? And on the right-hand side of this slide, these are the definitions we created back when we were creating our strategy. So for us, diversity was about every single person, everyone being unique and their perspectives being different. And inclusion was about creating this environment where everyone could be their authentic selves. So taking those 2 points, we then thought about what outcome did we actually want for the organisation? How did we want Guinness to look as a result of this strategy? So for us, it was about creating a place where everyone could come to Guinness and be their authentic selves. Everyone feeling part of the organisation, everyone feeling respected and valued, so they would give their best to Guinness, to their colleagues, to our customers and to themselves. It was about everybody feeling comfortable in sharing their views, because we recognised that the best business solutions, the best ideas come from bringing together diverse viewpoints and talents. And by doing that, we'd be able to do even more for the communities we serve. It was really important to us that everyone had and knew they had the same opportunities to succeed at Guinness, so that they could learn, grow and develop their careers. And it was really important to us that future people who would join Guinness, that we'd be selecting and recruiting them in a way that meant they felt they could show their very best. So we could attract more diverse people and attract the best people in their field. The final thing that was really important to us, the final outcome we really wanted, as a national provider of housing, we have homes and communities across the country. So it was important to us that this was wider than just our colleagues, because we wanted to be able to create change in the communities we serve. So our strategy needed to address that too. So having thought about these 3 questions and what we wanted from this, we translated our answers into these 5 strategic aims you can see on the screen, slightly summarised versions. So these were quite big statements. Sorry, we had these 5 aims, and then we had this overarching one about data as well, because it was really important to us that actually we were using data throughout to measure and report on the impact of our D&I work. So whilst these are quite big strategic aims, and they're quite big words we were using.
Sorry, you're coming, you're fading in and out.
You can't hear me very well.
If you lean in a bit more, might be better.
Give me a shout again if you're not hearing me. So just a really quick summary. We answered those questions. We translated that into these 5 strategic aims, with the overarching one about data. And then under each of these strategic aims, because these were quite big statements, we identified some specific objectives that we knew we needed to deliver. 1, to actually deliver our strategy, but 2, to bring this strategy to life for our people. And because our D&I strategy was all about all the people in our organisation and all the people who would be joining our organisation in the future, it was very much for everyone, and everyone was this word that kept coming up again and again. And so that became the name of our strategy and the name of the D&I movement we created. So when you're thinking about your strategy, if you're creating a strategy, think about those 3 questions: why you want to do it, what it means to you, and actually what you want the outcome to be for your organisation. I'm now going to talk to you, give you some more specifics about what we actually did to deliver our D&I strategy. I want to start with some overarching principles that are important, or should be important, to any organisation, and actually should be important wherever you are on your D&I journey and throughout. So the first thing to say is D&I needs to be a part of your culture. It's not an add-on to what you're doing. So you can't just bolt this on to what you're doing and expect it to be assimilated throughout the organisation. It has to be a part of everything you're doing every day. So from the way you recruit, the way you train people, but importantly, the decisions you make organisationally. So you need to think about D&I in the same way you think about other really important criteria. So if, for example, you think about health and safety when making important decisions in your organisation, you should consider D&I in exactly the same way when making decisions. That helps it become really embedded in everything you do. Secondly, and I've already mentioned data, and it was this overarching stream throughout our strategy. Data is so important throughout your D&I strategy. It's going to be one of the most important parts. You're going to use it at the start when you're creating your strategy to check your current position, but you're going to use it throughout to check where you should prioritise, but also how well you're delivering against your strategy. And you're going to want data to be dynamic. So all the time you'll be looking at the impact of what you're doing, how successful you're being, and also using data to identify if you actually need to refocus your efforts anywhere. And because data is so important, I'm going to come back to it again a little bit later. The third thing to say is D&I is really an evolving journey. It doesn't end at any point. So you can't think of D&I as something you're going to do. Whilst you might have a strategy which is for a fixed period, or objectives which you're going to deliver within a certain time frame, and it's important to have dates for delivery, you're going to all the time be thinking about new approaches to D&I. When we think about how quickly the world changes, the things we're talking about today are going to be very different from the things we were talking about 10 years ago. And equally, the things we're talking about in 10 years' time are probably going to be different from the world today as well. So it is this evolving, never-ending journey. And the final thing to remember throughout is don't forget why you're doing this. So those three questions you asked when you were developing your strategy. Remember your values, keep in mind all the time why D&I is so important to your organisation and what outcomes you want. If you keep that in mind, it keeps your focus and it helps you maintain this priority all the time. So one of the really important things to do with your D&I strategy is actually to champion it throughout your organisation. And particularly if it's a new strategy, it's really important to champion it. So for us, it was really important we made our strategy real, and we did that by putting it down in writing. It feels really simple, but actually by putting something into words, putting our CEO's vision down into writing, it really helped create a focus for what we wanted to do. It provided clarity, but it also showed a real commitment to all our people that meant they could hold us to account if they thought we weren't delivering as we should be. And for us, we actually took, Chris mentioned this earlier about how we sometimes print documents. For us, we took the decision here, and we don't do this often because it's expensive and not the most environmentally friendly thing to do, but we took the decision to actually print out copies of our strategy for every single member of staff. And the reason we did that, again, was to show just how important this was. It meant we could give everybody their own personal copy. It meant every single member of staff could read it, could revisit it, could flick through it at their leisure. They could really understand it. But again, if at any point they thought we weren't doing what we should be, they had their own reference document they could refer back to and say, actually, I'm not sure you're doing what you've said you've committed to do. So that was really important for us to show just how important it was. We wrote it down, we printed it, and everybody had their own copy. Again, earlier, Chris talked about the importance of leadership. For our D&I strategy, this was absolutely vital. Leadership's really critical in showing how important D&I is to you. So for us, our D&I strategy was created by and owned by our CEO. So she was and still is the sponsor. And she delivered all the initial messaging to all our colleagues about just how important it is to Guinness and why it's so important. So for you, have a think about who is it in your organisation that delivers the most important messages? Who owns your really important priorities? Because I'm sure we all understand that if that person owns and is responsible for something, your organisation will also find a way to prioritise it. But it wasn't just our CEO who was owning this. All of our board were behind it. All of our executive team were behind it. Our directors and our heads of service understood it and were delivering consistent messaging too. And that's really important that all of your leaders are delivering this constant and consistent message throughout the organisation. So whilst leaders are vital, your middle managers are super important too. I'm sure we all know that middle managers have the opportunity to create subcultures in your organisation because they're the people who generally have the most interaction with the majority of your workforce. So it's so important they're on board with your messaging too. You need to think about the way this is going to work best for your organisation. But for us, the way we did this was to call all our managers together for our first ever managers conference, where we launched our D&I strategy to them. It gave us a face-to-face space to actually explain the importance directly to our middle managers. And we used this opportunity to give them their personal copy. And it gave them the space to first understand it, but secondly, to ask questions and understand the messaging that we wanted everybody in the organisation to be delivering it. And again, linked to managers, it's important that you don't just sort of think you can give that message and then expect it to work. For us, we understood the importance of this consistent messaging and supporting material for our managers. So we actually took the step of reviewing all of our management training programs to ensure every single program included diversity and inclusion in the syllabus. And we took the step of making it mandatory that every manager of people in our organisation had to complete unconscious bias training at key points in the year. So before performance reviews, before they set targets for anybody else, and also once a year if they were responsible for recruiting other people. It sent that message to everyone about just how important D&I was, but it also ensured we were giving people regular refreshers about what D&I meant to them. And also linked to training, we actually reviewed all the training for new managers. So anyone who was a new manager at Guinness, anyone who was on a management development course, D&I was introduced as key part of the syllabus, as a key module in that learning. So leaders are vital, managers really important. Actually, it's so important that it's not just your leaders and managers championing D&I, because if that's the case, you risk creating a vacuum in your organisation. You need absolutely everybody to own, deliver and live your strategy, because remember, it's part of your organisational culture. So for us, again, we launched it to all of our colleagues face-to-face through all staff roadshows, where we bring all of our staff together to a single location. And we used this opportunity for our CEO to talk directly to our people, again, firsthand about why this was so important to us, why it was important to them individually, why it was important to our organisation and to our customers, and what exactly we were going to do and what outcome we wanted. And again, we gave everybody their personal copy at our roadshows. But again, we didn't want to just leave it at that first message. We wanted to create some real energy behind our D&I strategy. And I talked to you earlier about how we'd branded our strategy Everyone. So we wanted to create a campaign that would keep it in everybody's mind all the time. And I'm sure we're all quite familiar with some of the campaigns that really take off, that people get behind. Things like Black Lives Matter, Me Too, these are movements people can get involved in. So for us, we created our Everyone campaign. We gave every member of staff one of these Everyone badges that they could wear on their lanyard. And we gave members of staff these tote bags as well, which had Everyone printed on them. And the purpose of this was to keep the Everyone message really visible. What we saw was everywhere you walked around the office, you could see the Everyone branding all the time. So it kept it in everyone's mind all the time, but it also created the opportunity for regular conversations between people about our strategy, about D&I generally, about how we were performing. And it was a really important way for us to actually embed the strategy through the organisation. Championing D&I alone isn't enough. As I said, with your strategy, you're going to have the action to deliver. So here's some of the things we've actually learned about delivering against your D&I strategy. When you create your objectives, you're going to have actions to deliver against those objectives. And the way you deliver is likely to be a mix of loud or subtle actions. And what do I mean by that? So loud actions are those actions that make a lot of noise. So they show people what you're doing, and it makes it really visible to people. So things like celebrating religious festivals or events like Pride, signing up for accreditations or awards, they make a really big difference by loudly keeping D&I on the agenda all the time, keeping that interest and momentum going. So loud actions are probably one of the best ways to champion your D&I strategy and exactly what you're doing. And they're also actions that can engage lots of people. So some of the other things we did, we ran a campaign around mental health first aiders at Guinness. We gave people the opportunity to get trained by professionals in the field of mental wellbeing to actually become a mental health first aider. We delivered a series of talks in conjunction with Scope. We actually created a D&I champion as part of our annual employee award scheme. So it gave our colleagues the opportunity to nominate somebody to reward their efforts and show how well they'd helped contribute to our D&I agenda. And again, keeping D&I really high on everyone's collective agenda. Subtle actions, on the other hand, they tend to be quieter, but actually you might find they're more impactful in respect of creating longer lasting improvement in your organisation or change or cultural shift. So they're more likely to be things that your people won't immediately notice. They could be things like undertaking an equality impact assessment, redesigning a process to support inclusivity, or just creating some mechanisms to enable extra opportunities for voices to be heard. So they're really important because, as I say, these are some of the things that can create the sort of organisational or structural change over a longer period and the longer lasting change. And they might not be widely known or recognised about by all your colleagues and workforce straight away, but they will ensure the fairness and inclusivity. And what they should enable is for you to loudly share some of your success later on. So, for example, it might be that actually by virtue of doing an equality impact assessment about something and ensuring something's fair, you can then later on share some of the positive stories that come out of that in a really loud way to your colleagues. So both actions, both loud and subtle actions, have their place, and a mix is probably best, as it says on here. But one of the cautions I'd add is loud actions, by virtue of being loud, they're also much more visible, and so they carry higher risk. And one of the risks is that there is the risk of them being seen as tokenistic. And here's an example of what I mean by that. So every year we change our logo at Guinness to the Pride flag. It's really important to us because we're really committed to supporting our LGBT customers, colleagues in the wider community. And because we're proud of it, we don't just share it internally, we share it externally as well on social media. So here's a trail that was on LinkedIn one year. Somebody actually challenged us and said, this feels really tokenistic to be changing your logo in this way. And we explained that we do it every year. It's really important to us. It's part of raising awareness and celebrating. And the person actually came back and still felt it was tokenistic and said they felt it would be much more appropriate and more supportive of the LGBT community to work with organisations who actually are helping to address issues. For us, we were able to respond and actually show how we were already doing that. We were actually working with the specific organisation that had been called out, and we were actually sponsoring some really groundbreaking research work into the link between the LGBT community and dementia and the support that's needed. And we were able to link to the work we're actually doing. So it's really important, if you're going to publicly share some of your loud actions and loud successes, that you're able to basically put your money where your mouth is as well. I'm coming back to data here, and Annalise has already told me I've been talking for a long time, so I'm going to speed up a little bit. Data really is super important in everything you're doing in your D&I journey. It helps set your priorities early on. It really helps measure the impact of what you're doing, but it really helps to identify if you need to refocus what you're doing. So you're going to be looking at data all the time, and that's quantitative data. So things like who your people are, who's getting promotions, who's leaving your organisation, whether there are any gaps anywhere in what you're doing. And some of that data you're going to need anyway for legal reasons. So if you've got to do gender pay reporting, for example, you're going to need that data for a specific reason. But even if you don't think you need it for a legal reason, you should be collecting and using it anyway. One of the things I'd say about data is You might find you actually don't know enough about your people to measure everything you'd like to across all the protected characteristics. And so this might be an area you want to prioritise. It was something we certainly looked at as part of our D&I journey. And I'll just give you a couple of really quick tips about this because it is a really big and important area. The first thing I'd say is make sure you've got a really good system in place to hold any employee data in a secure way. And make sure you've got really good controls in place about who can actually access that data. Our system, and this is really important, it enables people to provide their own information directly. So it means people don't have to tell somebody else their data in order for it to be captured somewhere. They can log into a system themselves and share it privately. If actually you require your people to tell somebody else who then records it, you may find people much more unwilling to share that data. One of the really important things is you need to be clear about why you're collecting it and then why you're using it to comply with data protection, but also so your people understand why you're doing this. Because remember, a lot of what you're asking people to share is going to be very personal to them. And for your people to share it, they're putting a lot of trust in you. And trust has to be earned. So you actually need to build and prove that trust to your people. And one way to do that is actually to provide the clear explanation of what you need, what you're going to do with it, and then actually show that you've used it. So one way you might do that is your gender pay reporting. You might say, you've provided the data, here's the outcome, here's something we want to work on and improve. And then the next year, hopefully, you can use data again to show your colleagues the improvement that's been made. And really quickly, I just want to show one of our successes here. So at Guinness, we were really keen to increase declarations about ethnicity at Guinness from our workforce. So we had about 79% of our colleagues had shared their ethnicity with us. We wanted to actually report on ethnicity pay gap, and so we wanted to increase that number. And in the space of a month or two, we actually increased it from 79% declarations to 92%, which was absolutely massive for us. We were really pleased. And this was all linked to our work on race and ethnicity, which Annalise is going to talk to you about later, but how we proved to people that actually it was important and it was valuable for people to share it, and that we would use the data responsibly. So whilst quantitative data is really important, qualitative data is equally important. So an example of that, on this slide, it's just got loads of the data we collect and use. On the right-hand side, it shows some of the way we use data in employee engagement surveys. So for us, a couple of years ago, when we did our employee engagement survey, we identified that colleagues who told us they had a disability were actually telling us they were less engaged than other colleagues. So based on this data, we used it to run focus groups with colleagues to understand why they were saying that. And then based on what they were telling us, so based on that qualitative data, we actually prioritised our approach to disability as one of our key actions based on what colleagues were saying. So earlier I touched on one of the loud actions we delivered was the work we've done with Scope. And actually following delivery of those actions, when we ran our survey again, and again analysed the results by protected characteristic, we saw improved results in our most recent survey. Colleagues who have a disability were reporting similar levels of engagement to colleagues who don't have a disability. I could talk for ages about data. Some key things: make sure you're looking at all parts of the employee life cycle: probation, promotions, secondment, training, professional qualifications, disciplinary, grievance, leavers. But don't just look at it at a global level, look at it, check if there are any local issues you need to look at. That could be based on geography, could be based on managers. If the data suggests there's gaps or issues, you need to think about how you're going to use the data to actually address these. So again, for example, we identified we wanted to improve development opportunities in our organisation for colleagues from an ethnic minority background. So we've invested a lot in development programmes to support this. And I don't mean we've actually delivered everything ourselves, but actually we've engaged with things that already exist, like mentoring schemes available within the housing sector, ensuring our existing in-house development programmes have a specific number of spaces available for ethnic minority colleagues. but also working with partners in our organisation to develop new programmes for underrepresented colleagues. So if you find issues when you look at your data, don't think you have to create all the solutions yourself. Think about if your sector already offers something that you can get involved with, or if you can partner with other people to help address any gaps. Communication is really, really important. Chris talked about it in respect of our IIP journey. The key thing here is about keeping the message in everyone's mind all the time. You're going to deliver corporate messaging around how you're progressing, but actually let your people speak too. Let them share their voices through blogs, videos, however it works best in your organisation. D&I is one of those really emotive subjects, so the more personal you can make the comms, the more you're going to win the hearts and minds of your people. But do make sure you share updates, facts and figures too, because your people want to see the progress you're making. And as I said, make stories relatable where you can when you're celebrating and sharing success. Data provides the evidence, but these personal stories really do win your people over. And what we found was, as people started telling their own stories, more and more people started sharing their stories too. So create opportunities where you can for people to celebrate and share successes. As I said before, if you're going to share your successes externally, which we do because we're really proud of what we do, remember the risk of people challenging you. So you do need to be able to back up what you're saying. And I've added a line on here around if you can see it, you can be it. It's a really important phrase. If your people can see others who look like them doing well in the organisation, it sends a really positive message. So when you're thinking about your comms, when you're thinking about these personal messages, think how you can profile senior colleagues who are doing well. Think about how you can share interviews with them. Think about how you can showcase stories about promotions and training. Really important to show your people about how they can succeed in your organisation. I want to talk really quickly, and I will make this quick, about how you can promote or how we took the approach of promoting D&I to more widely than just our existing workforce. So the first thing we looked at was future colleagues. All those things I've talked about data, they also apply to people who are going to join your organisation in the future. Think about data in respect of your recruitment process. Are there any concerns about who's applying, who's being shortlisted, who's being interviewed, and who's actually being appointed? If there are, how are you going to address it? As I said right at the beginning, it was important to us that we brought diverse people into the organisation. If that's important to you, it's really important you do look at your recruitment processes. When you're looking at your recruitment processes, look at things like your recruitment material. Are you using gender neutral language? Are you requiring people to have X years of experience? I know some of this stuff feels really obvious, but actually, as an example, in the housing world, there's underrepresentation of ethnic minorities on boards. And if people require previous experience on a board, it makes it really difficult to ever broaden the pool of possible candidates who are non-white to join a board. So just think about the adverts you put out there. And also really important is thinking about the imagery you use in your adverts, but more broadly than that, on your website, on social media. Your prospective employees and future employees are going to be looking at that. And as I said, if you can see it, you can be it. People want to see someone who looks like themselves. It shows you're an inclusive organisation. So think about whether your imagery actually portrays your D&I commitment. One of the things we do is audit our website and our intranet and our social media every single month. And this isn't as simple as just sort of doing a count of one man, one woman. We actually look at the topics that we're writing about as well. So if it's a topic about things like people being in arrears and not able to pay their rent, that might be considered a more negative story. We make sure that there's a balance of imagery around positive stories and negative stories as well. I'm sure we're all familiar with the concept of blind recruitment. It is really important. Consider that, removing names and identity markers from applications and CVs. There's still loads of evidence that even to this day in Western countries, applicants with ethnic minority sounding names are shortlisted less than people with white sounding names. So just remove any of that risk by making shortlisting blind. And one last thing on this, make your interview panels diverse as well. People instinctively prefer people who look like them. So again, back to this, if you can see it, you can be it. If you can make your interview panels diverse, it's going to put people applying to your organisation more at ease, and they'll be able to perform their best at interview stage. And consider any small things you can do which can make a massive difference in interviews when people are coming into your organisation. So one of the really small things we do is actually allow colleagues to wear D&I badges. So colleagues wear rainbow badges on their lanyard. It can make a massive difference to people coming into your organisation when they see small statements like that. It sends a really positive message about your commitment. The next point is about leveraging your influence. So what I mean by this is you'll be paying people to provide services to your organisation. So you should be asking them about their D&I credentials as well. So as a minimum, do they have policies in place that comply with the Equality Act? Do they share your commitment to D&I? You're paying these people money. So the least you can expect is that they share your commitment, because remember, it's part of your culture. At Guinness, we do that with all our suppliers. It's currently a yes/no question about if they comply, but this year we're actually going to be introducing scoring in respect of D&I. So D&I is considered alongside other important criteria like quality, cost, safety when we decide who we want to work with. Focus on the communities you're serving. Can you make changes in the wider community? So for us, as I said, we've got communities across the country. It's really important that you consider if you can make wider change, and this links to the next point about making societal change. These kind of things can be the really good, the really feel-good projects that colleagues get behind. So for us, we've done things like introducing tutoring support for younger residents in our communities where they've got English as a second language. It makes a massive impact to educational results, which makes a societal change for the future, but it makes a massive statement to our colleagues and to the wider world about our commitment to D&I as well. Other things we've done, launching a Women into Maintenance programme to get more women into trades. And our women trade ambassadors actually going to schools to talk to girls and young women about why trades are a great career for women, to try and change stereotypes at an earlier age. So do think about how you might be able to contribute towards societal change to make wider, more long-lasting changes for the future. Okay, really quickly, it's really important to measure the impact of what you're doing. So I said at the start, you think about how you want your organisation to look as a result of your D&I strategy. I want to talk to you, and I'll try and do this in a couple of minutes, about how this worked out for us. So whilst we're still in our strategy period and it runs for a couple more years, there's always going to be more to do because D&I is an evolving journey. When we were talking about what we wanted for our D&I strategy, we talked about everyone feeling themselves, everyone feeling respected and valued so they could give their best. And each year we ask our colleagues to share a video with us. We ask people to record themselves telling us how they think the year has been in delivering against those 4 greats Chris talked about at the beginning: great service, great homes, great place to work and great business. So when we did this recently, we saw something quite unique actually. After we'd done loads of work on D&I and really embedded this in the organisation, we saw colleagues proactively talking about D&I in their videos. Whilst we'd normally see loads of stuff about the service we were providing, we were seeing things like a colleague who'd come to the UK as a refugee, telling us about how she'd got a job at Guinness and describing how it had given her a sense of belonging and safety. We saw an older colleague talking about how, having been recruited into Guinness that year, he was delighted that being over the retirement age hadn't affected his application at all. A gay colleague telling us how he didn't have to hide who he was when he worked at Guinness and the positive impact this has had on his well-being. And we literally saw one story after another, people talking about the D&I approach at Guinness and how it was making a positive impact on them. And then we had one last story, which, when she was telling us her D&I story, it wasn't necessarily unique, but then she said this statement right at the end of her video: "I'm valued and respected for who I am. It's a great place to be me." And these last words perfectly summed up what we wanted from our D&I strategy. We wanted everyone to come to Guinness and be their authentic selves, somewhere they felt valued, respected, safe, where they could succeed, develop and grow. So actually that year we took a different approach with our video where we reviewed our progress, and we put together a D&I video. that we shared with all our colleagues at our annual roadshow. And we called that video "A Great Place to Be Me," and let colleagues share their positive stories of D&I at Guinness. Now, I'd have loved to have shared it with you today, but I really couldn't trust myself with technology. But if you are interested and want to find it, it's available on our recruitment website. We're really proud of it, and we want anyone who joins Guinness in the future to see our commitment to D&I. One really quick pitch about measuring impact. IIP really helped us to just measure the impact more widely in our organisation. Last time we did our assessment with them, IIP helped us introduce these questions as part of the employee survey. We were really pleased with the results. It showed that there was really strong agreement across the organisation around D&I, and I'm sure if you wanted to do the same in your organisation, investors and people would be delighted to help you with that too. I'm sure Annalise is thinking I've spoken for far too long, and I'm sure she's absolutely right. I'd say there's always more to do, and whilst we're really pleased with our progress, there's always more to do. We've had a really clear focus of what we wanted to deliver, what we wanted to focus on throughout the year. But one of the things about D&I which makes it not unique to all your other organisational objectives is sometimes you need to change your focus. Sometimes there'll be unexpected things that come up where actually you need to respond just as you would with any other business priority. And Annalise is going to talk to us about 2020 now, which has been a very strange year for a number of reasons, but she's going to talk to you about our D&I approach during 2020.
Thank you, Jeremy. Hi, everyone. Thank you, IIP, for inviting us. So I guess what I'm doing is providing a sort of case study of our everyone strategy in action. So I'm going to talk about our approach to anti-racism. So I don't think I really need to sort of go into what happened. We all know what happened and the global movement that came because of it. But I suppose the question is, why did we respond? Why did Guinness respond? And we responded because, you know, obviously it was something that was very topical at the time. There has been research about the housing sector that's gone out suggesting that there is more to do with diversity and inclusion, especially in leadership positions. And as you've already seen, it's something that we already do. So we were celebrating Black History Month long before, you know, the BLM movement became more mainstream. So the first thing we did was we published a statement. So we published an internal and external statement. Up here, you've got the external statement we put on the website, and just made a very clear, made it very clear that we support that Black Lives Matter and we support the movement, and that, you know, we're going to investigate and we're going to do something about it. So when we did that, it was very well received by our colleagues. People were very happy to see that external and internal commitment. So what we decided to do was to hold a series of conversations and titled them The Conversations. And we had 5 different conversations with different groups of people. The first one was with our colleagues from ethnic minorities. We invited them to a conversation to talk about what it's like to be an ethnic minority in the UK, what it's like to work in the UK as an ethnic minority, and what it's like to be at Guinness. We had about 36 people attend. On the officer side, we had our CEO, Katrina. We had our Managing Director of Care, Paul, who is also the sponsor for the D&I steering group, whose responsibility it is to deliver the Everyone strategy. And we had Chris, Jeremy, and myself. The second conversation was with the leadership team. So this is all our executive committee as well as the directors. And we at this conversation, which I co-facilitated with an external facilitator, we spoke about the things that came out of the first conversation, you know, how people felt, and sort of trying to share some of the stories and some of the insights. And what came out of this particular conversation was our mostly white middle class leadership team were a bit concerned about having the sort of language and skills required to have meaningful race conversations with their subordinates. We also had some really good suggestions about looking at the supply chain and how we could maybe increase the minority-led businesses that or people that we do business with, and then some various ideas around development, etc. The third conversation was with the D&I steering group. And at this conversation, we shared feedback from the previous two conversations. And what came out of this one was around, support for the concept, for the idea, but also how do we deliver on this without losing sight of the things that we've done in disability, with LGBT, and sort of just maintaining focus, because obviously what we didn't want to do is sort of drop all the other stuff we're doing just to do this. We wanted to be able to focus on it all. And then after that, we had two conversations which were open to everybody. The first one, we had about 80 people from across the business. And in that one, we were sort of talking about some of the ideas and suggestions, things like, what do you think of an ethnic minority only development program? What do you think about us setting targets, and sort of getting feedback from people around that? And then the fifth one was again open to everybody. And that was after we'd released our action plan and statement, asking people how they felt about it. Did it represent what they thought it would? Was it what they expected to see? So after the fourth conversations, after the fourth conversation, what did we learn from all this? Well, hearing powerful stories, hearing personal stories, is very powerful. So having people talk about their lived experience, some of the things they went through at school, or living in, mostly white neighborhoods or stuff like that, was very sort of insightful for a lot of people who previously had no idea what life was like for people of ethnic minorities. Another running theme was people wanted to see data. So they wanted to see, what exactly is the minority makeup within Guinness, and where is it? Representation at senior levels was a concern, which I've previously mentioned is a wider concern within the housing industry. And conversations about race were uncomfortable for everyone. So, for people talking about it, sharing personal experience, it's uncomfortable. For people hearing about it, it's also uncomfortable. It's just a generally uncomfortable topic, but that doesn't mean, shy away from it. And people were really proud of Guinness, and they were really proud of the way the company came out and made a statement and was actually doing something about it. We had a lot of feedback about that. So we published our anti-racism statement. You can see it's signed by our chairman of the board, our CEO, and myself. And in it is our sort of 5-year plan and our commitment to what it is that we're going to do, and how we're going to plan to do it. This was very well received by our people. We tried to integrate the feedback that came from the various groups and put it all together in one sort of short statement. To support it, we also developed an action plan. Now, you'll see that the action plan is very similar to, or follows the same headings as the Everyone strategy that Jeremy was talking us through. And the idea behind this is that we want to integrate it into the stuff we're already doing. We didn't want to sort of have it sit separately. We want it to be part and parcel of our wider D&I strategy. You'll also see that we've got targets and we've got accountability. So we've put who's responsible for delivering and when we expect to see something delivered, as well as what it is that we're trying to achieve. We published this internally for all staff so people could see exactly what we were going to do and how we were going to do it. So if an organization is looking to do something similar, I suppose key things I'd suggest people consider are creating that environment where people feel comfortable about talking about such sensitive issues, and giving people that sort of safety net, if you like, so that they can share their thoughts. We set up a dedicated email in advance of the initial meetings so that people could sort of email and tell us, what do you want to talk about? What do you think? And then after the various conversations, some people, as you know, people don't always talk in meetings. Some people afterwards would email questions, suggestions, feedback, etc., which we found very useful. And then the other thing is closing the feedback loop. It's really important because if you're asking people to help and contribute to something, they want to see what's actually happening with it. So earlier this year in February, we published our anti-racism update. With it, based on our action plan, we sort of highlighted these are the things we've done so far. This is, how many people have attended. This is what's been going on. This is what's happening. So people could actually see that, again, it's reinforcing that we're not just talking, we're doing something about it. So that went up on the internet in February. It wasn't easy. Obviously, there were some challenges that we had to overcome, and as would anyone trying to do this kind of work, creating that safe zone. What we did, as I said, is we separated our groups out so that people would feel more comfortable with for want of a better term, like-minded people, having those initial conversations open to everyone, we probably wouldn't have got as much insight, if you like. Again, I mean, I don't know. This is the approach we chose. Making commitments you can deliver. We did tell people what we could and couldn't deliver. Obviously, you ask for ideas, you get loads of ideas. You can't do all of it. And it's always best to just say, well, okay, maybe or not, or we'll look into it, etc. Credibility. And we did that by having consistency in facilitation. So I facilitated most of the discussions. By the leadership one, where I co-facilitated with an external. We had commitment from the CEO and ET. Katrina attended most of the conversations herself, and the ET executive team was directly and quite like physically, not physically, remotely, if you like, supportive of this, delivering the hard truth. Obviously, some of the messages you're going to hear are not going to be great. Well, not obviously, maybe they will be. But for example, for us, our initial data wasn't that good, but we didn't shy away from it. We shared it, and then we said what we were going to do to improve it. And I think people respect that sort of honesty, and it helps with buy-in and getting more people involved and excited about the initiative. And then another sort of challenging one is people will have different views on this sort of thing. I mean, you'll get things like all lives matter and things like that. And I'm of the opinion, or we're of the opinion, that people should be allowed to speak. And if you encourage everyone to talk, then at least you know what you're dealing with, and then you can tailor interventions or education accordingly. I mean, we had someone talk about, well, we all used to watch Faulty Towers and we all used to laugh at it. Why is it a thing now? And it's like, well, okay, maybe people didn't say anything then, maybe they only feel more confident talking about it now. But at least if you have that stuff, you can respond to it rather than people not feeling comfortable enough to say anything. Budget, obviously. I think everyone struggles with this one. With the exception of the external facilitator for leadership, we did most of this internally. And then again, managing other commitments. We've only got so much resource and we need to deliver on the various things. What we did is we got buy-in from, D&I, from the board and from the executive team to support this initiative. So some hints and tips for any organization that would want to do something like this. I'd suggest involving as many people as possible. We engaged with about 5% of our organization from different entities, levels, from the apprentices all the way to executive team across all three entities, because people have different views and experiences, and you want everyone to feel like they've got something to add, because they do. Again, integrating your commitments into your current strategy or way of working rather than having a separate work stream, because we're all very busy. There's only so much time. Sticking to your commitments or communicating why you haven't delivered, because then you lose goodwill. If you say you're going to do all this stuff and then you don't do it, people, who would previously be supportive, might not necessarily. Another point to consider is anti-racism conversations engagement. It's not just about enlightening white people. There's also a sort of learning or a bit around the ethnic minority population as well. For some people, it's really difficult to talk about this, and you have to respect and be aware of that. So what we did is we had support in place. When we had all of these conversations, we referred people to employee assistance program, HR or managers, just so that they were aware that there were ways that that we could support them and that we appreciate it. It wouldn't be easy for people. And then just looking beyond the workforce. Obviously, your workforce is your immediate area where you can make the impact, but you can also look at how can you influence your suppliers or your stakeholders. How can you make a difference to them as well? So in terms of what's next for Guinness, we ongoing data challenges and reporting. We're looking at developing some life cycle reporting, so end-to-end employment data, and obviously trying to make that easier, meaningful, and actually doing things with the information. We're working with 4 other housing associations to develop a sector management development program aimed at middle level managers from ethnic minorities, hoping to launch in about June, July. Delivering our action plan and statement, because obviously we've said we'll do it, so we need to. And again, ensuring we don't lose momentum while delivering on our other diversity commitments, which is an ongoing balancing act, as I'm sure people appreciate. So that's a bit about our anti-racism intervention, and now to Chris.
Thanks, Annalisa, and thanks, Jeremy. So you can tell that we're very, very passionate about this, and I think we could probably have spoken for 3 hours if you'd wanted to listen to us. But so thank you very much for giving us the time to talk to you today.